This episode of Sovryn Tech is dedicated to Ursula K. Guin. We will continue to strive to be the realists of a larger reality.
I think hard times are coming when we will be wanting the voices of writers who can see alternatives to how we live now and can see through our fear-stricken society and its obsessive technologies to other ways of being, and even imagine some real grounds for hope. We will need writers who can remember freedom, poets, visionaries, the realists of a larger reality. Right now, I think we need writers who know the difference between production of a market commodity and the practice of an art. Developing written material to suit sales strategies in order to maximize corporate profit and advertising revenue is not quite the same thing as responsible book publishing or authorship. Thank you, brave applauders. Yet, I see sales departments given control over editorial. I see my own publishers in a silly panic of ignorance and greed charging public libraries for an e-book 6 or 7 times more than they charge customers. We just saw a profiteer try to punish a publisher for disobedience, and writers threatened by corporate fatwa. And I see a lot of us, the producers, who write the books and make the books, accepting this, letting commodity profiteers sell us like deodorant and tell us what to publish and what to write. Well, I love you too, darling. Books, they're not just commodities. The profit motive is often in conflict with the aims of art. We live in capitalism. Its power seems inescapable. So did the divine right of kings. Any human power can be resisted and changed by human beings. Resistance and change often begin in art, and very often in our art, the art of words. I have had a long career and a good one, in good company. Now here, at the end of it, I really don't want to watch American literature get sold down the river. We who live by writing and publishing want and should demand our fair share of the proceeds. But the name of our beautiful reward is not profit. Its name is freedom. Thank you.
This is Jane Smith reporting for WASP News. We report so you don't have to decide. Now, we're live outside of Sovryn Studios, where a protest has been taking place. Sir, what is going on here?
We're going to put an end to his godless hedonism. He's corrupting the entire planet.
You must be talking about the golden stallion of the tech world, Brian Sovryn?
That's right. That sex fiend of an anarchist has crossed the line. We're going to rip his triple black clothing and then him to shreds.
But Brian Sovryn believes in nonviolence.
We don't care. He wants to end government and wants to pervert science and technology to do it. Brian Sovryn has to be stopped.
This just in. Brian Sovryn is coming out of the studio.
Just got done having more cold brew coffee than a fish swallows water, baby. Woo, I am ready to go. It is time for the podcast champion, the best in the world, the golden stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star. Oh, baby, is it on fire today? Oh, it's been a hell of a week. Just coming off of, in my opinion, a hell of an episode last week. Oh, was that a good time or what? I'll tell you, anytime, that those ladies want to be on this show, it is open for them. All about it. Just two of my favorite people in the world. Woo! If you didn't hear it, go check it out. Science Cuddling had the astonishing Ellen on, had the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy on. Woo! Was that a great time? But this week, it's all just me. And you're going to have to deal with it. But, and I'm getting ready. Of course, Liberty Forum's coming up in just a couple weeks here. Ooh, is that going to be a hell of a time? That's going to be what nhlibertyforum.org is where you can go to find out more about that. Actually, it's nhlibertyforum.com. Sorry, it's .com. That's where you can find out more about it. Coming up February 8th to the 10th. I'm going to be there. The lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy's going to be there. It's going to be a hell of a time. Woo! I'm going to be at that hotel, baby, in Manchester, right from Ice Planet Zero. And you know what I'm talking about. New Hampshire, where my home geographic area that I just love and I can't really ever picture much leaving. But, oh, baby, you get to come to me. Woo! Come to me and see it all happen. I'll be on a panel. It's going to be a great time. I'm really excited for it. That is coming up so fast. And you know me. You know I'm going to do my best to make it a show. You know what I'm talking about. So, man, get ready for that. Now, something else real quick. Wow, a lot of people. We have tons of tech news to get into. Got some fun stuff too. In fact, something that might help you if you decide to visit New Hampshire this year or any other year in the coming future. Because I don't know about you. And maybe I should just talk about this later, and maybe I'll just reiterate it then. But I want people with with me. Like I want them here. You know, I don't want to rely on friendships that are always long distance or something like that. I want my friends here. Now I have very few friends by design, but I want them here. And I think there's really something to that. We'll talk more about that later though. We've got a really, really cool and I think helpful lead story this week, but we got tons to tech before we even get into that. But baby, really honored. So many people have been signing up over the past couple weeks. First off, we've got, I mean, now that it's been about a month since since all this started, I feel a little more confident calling it. Okay. We've added on like another 2,000 listeners over the past month and a half to Sovryn Tech. That's putting us in like the 13,000 listener per week range. I am so honored. Welcome to the thousands and thousands of Sovryn Tech listeners, baby, because you are in, and you know what you're in for. That's why you're still here. You are in for the ride of your life, a show unlike any other, being done by the best. I love it. So, and also, a lot of you all signed up for the Sovryn Tech newsletter, which issue 12 just came out this past week, which the Sovryn Tech newsletter, if you read the issue, you know that it's shifting to monthly instead of bi-weekly, but that's just so I can work on so many other really cool things, lots of really cool shit that I get to put out to you, and I am so excited for that. And I have just great people, the best people in the world working with me on that. I mean, really, just or at least my favorite people anyway. But if you're my favorite people, you're the best. That's the fact of life. So, get ready for that. But if you want to sign up for the newsletter, by the way, you want to check out, just go to zog.email. ZOG is in Zomi Offline Games, right? That's my main website where everything goes on. Just go to zog.email. You can't miss it. At the top of the page, there's the fucking, text field to put in your email address, and then you sign up. You prove you're not a robot. I know that's kind of an existential crisis to have to prove you're not a robot, but do that, and you're all set. And then, and I don't sell off your email addresses. I'm not interested in that. I just want to get out good shit to you. And I still get great response from everybody saying, wow, I loved the stories that you had, or there's a couple videos in the newsletter that I thought were just tremendous. I love the erotic short fiction. Oh, there's erotic short fiction in there because, baby, Sovryn Tech access is best, and I mean it when it comes to everything. Woo! So I love to bring on the sexy, and it's there for you. So do that. Go to zog.email. That's where you can find everything I do. If you're trying to find like my book, my Dark Android book, you can find it there. If you're trying to find out more about the fictional Sovryn universe that I think people should start getting ramped up for to get excited about, you can find it there. All the great sponsors for Sovryn Tech, everything's right there. They can lead you to Patreon even, or if you just want to go to sovryntech.com, that'll take you right to Patreon. And thank you so much to all the new patrons that signed up. And you got to understand, for just $1 a month on Patreon, that's all. You can do more, and most people do a lot more, but you can do more. For just $1 a month, you get near daily content, podcasts, all kinds of stuff on there that I'm putting out, and I'm going to be putting out even more. And it's not just me. You love the ladies that show up on this show. I know I sure as hell do. There's more of them. I mean, it is such an awesome. I've had people tell me they think it's the best value on the fucking internet. Fucking right. Thank you. Check it out. If you're not a patron yet, jump on it. It's such a broad swath of different content too. There's tech. You get to control it. You're the patrons. You're the executive producers. You get to tell me what you want me to talk about. Okay, including you get the weekly Q&A, which also, now, like I said, and I'm going to remind you here, you get the Q&A on this episode, or not in this episode, but in Sovryn Tech Prime episodes, the main episode that comes out every Saturday, that's always going to be free, you're never going to have to pay for, okay? I am now opening that up to a Q&A segment that will start next week, because I'm still collecting a lot of the questions, but it'll start next week. You can just email me, bbs@sovryntech.com. That's BBS as in Bulletin Board System, right? Or Brian Bacchus Sovryn. Woo, that's me, baby. bbs@sovryntech.com, and get your hookup. Now, let's start getting into this shit, all right? The opening audio was, in case you didn't notice or didn't recognize it, was from 2014 when Ursula K. Guin was getting a very prestigious award. And we are going to talk about her because talk about somebody that was an absolutely fucking seminal figure in my life. We're going to talk about her during the climax. I was going to talk about the new Godzilla movie, but we'll end up talking about Ursula K. Guin instead, which, if there's anybody bigger than Godzilla, she's one of them. So, sadly, she passed away at the age of 88 this week. So we will discuss that later on in the show. But right now we got tech news, baby. We got lots of tech news to get into. Let's start off with something good, something cool. Firefox 58 came out last week, and Firefox 58, beyond all belief, is actually faster than Firefox 57. Now, that's a big deal because Firefox 57, which came out, was that November, early November? That was the version that they named Firefox Quantum, where they came out with their new, effectively, it has a few different names that they've put out there, but they started using their new rendering engine instead of Gecko. And, and then they had their new add-on layer. Instead of using the older add-on system, they switched it to a Chrome compatibility layer so that more people could easily port their extensions and into add-ons on Firefox. It was this huge deal. And so many people, myself included, have really made the full-time switch to Firefox. because of this, because it really is. It is so goddamn fast. And now with Firefox 58, they're saying the frame rate for, everything going on with the page load is up another 30%. That's crazy. And I tested it out, and fucking yeah. I mean, it's I'm looking at it, that's even faster. So, I mean, fantastic that they've done that. But how they're pulling it off is that now they have Firefox itself accesses a specific CPU thread, and it uses that CPU thread alone to do a lot of the frame rate processing, and that's what gives its 30% increase in speed. Awesome. And in my opinion, I've seen it do it, and it does it. Like, it is that much faster. But that's not all they added in. It is a faster Firefox, beyond, like I said, beyond all belief. But also they put in like autofill for credit card details. I don't know that I necessarily agree with using that. Do that stuff one at a time. You want to be careful with that shit. But their screenshot feature, which was also added on, which was a new feature for Firefox Quantum, that now has copy and paste for that, and they also work within private browsing mode now, as to where before screenshots didn't work within that. And it also has, just for overall greater speed as well, it has changed how it caches and retrieves JavaScript. Okay, so that's just adding on more to that speed. I mean, it's crazy. And what I'm really pleased to see is that in the tech world, and with a lot of tech journalists and everything, they are saying what I said like a year and a half ago, partly because of what originally was announced with Firefox when they said that they were switching to Project Quantum, when they were switching to a new a rendering engine and everything. I said then, and even with what Microsoft was doing with Edge, I said the browser wars are going to heat back up. They're heating back up right now. This stuff isn't over. Everybody thinks that everybody just uses Chrome. That's going to change, because this shit's going to, because even then, I saw some of the preliminary stuff going on, especially from Mozilla, and I was like, whoa, they're not kidding. This actually works. So the browser wars are heating back up. Good. You want that. You never ever want a monoculture in anything. And that includes when it comes to browser choices. And I think it's exciting that, because, it's funny, because for a long time, it seemed like nobody was even really talking about browsers, which is crazy, because most people, that's where they spend the most of their time on their computer, is within the browser. So you'd think you'd want to be paying attention to news, and that you would want a lot of shaking up and a lot of improvements and everything. And it wasn't exactly happening. Chrome came out with a lot of their new ad blocker features as well in the past week, which of course I applaud ad blocking. I think Google's ad blocking might be a little nefarious. That's a conversation for another time. But boy, if you haven't tried Firefox yet, Firefox 58, even faster, it'll blow your mind. I'm not kidding. I know it's like, wow, what is this, a marketing thing? Is Mozilla paying you? No, I just want people using good software. That's half the reason I do this show, is to get people on board with the shit that works. And that's maybe a little more secure. And that's another thing that Firefox is doing a great job as far as is enhancing security overall with Firefox. So, okay, let's move on to some other stuff. Talk about another major shift, in an underlying platform. Firefox went to a new rendering engine, which is, very much the heart of a web browser. Actually, you know what? Just quick. You want to know the real reason to use Firefox? You want to know why you want to check? Forget about the speed. You want to know why you want to switch? Because you want to give the fucking finger to Google. You understand? You want to tell that company, fuck you. In fact, I'm amazed and I don't know if this is because maybe all these people have run out of something to talk about, because I've been saying this shit for years, but I'm amazed how many tech journalists are finally coming out and saying, and even just people in general are saying, yeah, Silicon Valley, we don't trust you. We've had enough. Something's not right. We don't like what you're doing. And they're pointing directly at Amazon, Facebook, Google, all the players that I've been pointing at for 6 years. Good. Well, here, you want to give a good fuck you to Google? Get rid of their goddamn platform, that being Chrome. Delete it. Go away. Firefox can do Hangouts now, but if that was something that was holding you back, Firefox can do that. I know you'd still end up using their service, but you get my point. Life is made up. One of the joys of life, let alone one of the wonderful ethical things you can do, life is made up of little rebellions that each of us do every day, all the time. The little laws we get to break if we're anarchists like myself, all these little things that we get to do, all these fun little rebellions. Well, here's a little rebellion. Use open source software, get the fuck away from Google shit, make it happen. and you could use Firefox. Start it up. It's a great browser anyway. And install it on Android too. Of course, if you got my book, darkandroid.info, you'd know all about that. But anyway, all right. Let's talk about some other stuff. But like I said, talking about, platforms changing. Wow. Microsoft. Not the, greatest subject to really talk about, but Microsoft, they are really going full bore in changing the underlying core of Windows. Not unironically, it's called Windows Core OS. Now, we knew that this was happening we talked about Andromeda OS over the past few months. This is something we've been following for about a year. Of course, Windows 10S came out and all this. And all of these different, this Windows Core thing is this idea of where Windows is the operating system itself is far more modular, okay? Where it can, you can deploy it without having to put everything that's in Windows. Because let's be clear here, okay? All bullshit aside and all joking aside, Windows, the operating system itself, really is like the Swiss Army knife of operating systems. I mean, let's just give a little credit where credit's due. It is remarkable how much software, how much backwards compatibility, how many different drivers and hardware that it can handle. Like, you could just throw everything at it, and generally it runs it. Maybe not always the best, for that you want Linux, but, or BSD if you're like me, but whatever. It's amazing what you can toss at it and what works. And now, so what they want to do is so instead of having all of that backwards compatibility and all of this, what could be bloat for a lot of people, like we were just saying, most people just spend time in their browser. They don't even fucking, they would never use a Win32 app or anything necessarily along those lines. Okay. So Microsoft is kind of aware of this, and they want to make lighter weight stuff that helps. Because when you get rid of a lot of that backwards compatibility and everything, and look, I don't want them to, but I'm just saying if you do, the advantages are probably better battery life. That's one of the most important things on planet Earth today for a lot of people. And you get a faster operating system. There's a lot of advantages, and obviously I think they're concerned about having to compete with like the mobile ethos in general, like kind of the mobile abstract, the way things work where they just turn on. This is part of like how Windows work. We talked about this, literally a new category in computing, which are anywhere or what is it, always on PCs or whatever, or anywhere PCs. Or always connected. That's what it is. Always connected PCs. That's a new category where PCs work more like smartphones, where you don't really turn them off. You just kind of like hit a button and they're instantly up and going. Now, part of being able to make that work, first off, they had to get, emulate Windows to work on ARM processors. But the other part is that, you've got to cut out a bunch of shit. Not that those PCs can't run, even though they're on ARM, not that they can't run Win32. Of course they, which means like the regular, like Audacity is a Win32 app, meaning that it uses the classic libraries that have been the backbone of Windows, for decades now. Okay. But anyway, so they're trying to slim down the operating system, and this is kind of a next generation for Windows. And I get it. I understand what they're doing. Now, the claim is, that they are going to start making this for desktop now. Before, we just thought that Windows Core OS, where you only put in these very specific features and you have this like modularity to the operating system, that it was just going to be something for, say, like the Andromeda device, which is this theorized foldable device that Microsoft's eventually going to come out with, or that it would be something for phones, or that it would be something for like IoT devices or something like that, or maybe the always connected PCs, right? Now they're saying, no, this is going to be a part of desktop too. They're like, going forward in the future, you're going to be installing Windows Core OS, and the desktop version has a specific name. They're calling it Polaris. Now they might change their mind about this. It's not coming out yet, but that is the plan, to have this much lighter weight, Windows operating system. Now, again, I'm kind of against this, and part of the reason is, and this is sort of weird, now, like, so before on ARM, it was like, when they were making Windows 10 to work on ARM processors, they were saying, okay, well, we got to figure out, or to get Win32, libraries and apps to work on ARM processors. Well, there's got to be some kind of like emulation to really make that work, because we really need Win32 apps to work. Kind of the funny thing is with Polaris is not designed to run Win32 apps at all, kind of like Windows 10S, okay, where it can only run UWP, but Polaris will be able to run Win32, but even though it's Windows 10 and it's going to run on Intel and AMD processors, okay, and it's a full desktop operating system, it's still going to have to run Win32 apps through emulation. That's kind of weird. And also, like, this isn't going to be, well, again, most people that I've talked to have said that, well, they're still going to, Microsoft's still going to keep full-blown Windows 10 going because, people will need it for servers. Gamers are going to need it for DirectX and, and all this different shit. Like, it's not exactly going to go away. But I don't know. I get it. I understand what they're doing. I know how it makes sense and all that. But I can't help but feel that Microsoft is really pushing people in a very specific direction. Look, we don't live in a world where you only have to have one computer. You can have multiple computers. One of them can be a Windows machine. The other can be a Linux machine. But it's starting to feel, again, much like how people, and I don't think this is necessarily new ideas from Microsoft, because really it's starting to feel again like when everybody was scared when Windows 10 was first coming out that, we won't, like, in fact, we talked about this on a recent Patreon Q&A, where there was the idea of SteamOS, which was going to be from Valve, which was going to be a gaming operating system because they were worried that Microsoft was going to cut out the ability to install games independently of the Windows Store, or the Microsoft Store, that it's called now. And it's starting to feel like things are going in that direction. If you are now running on everything, not just on devices that like ARM-based devices or something, if you have to emulate Win32 across the board, for gamers where every ounce of juice, of power matters, this is not good. So not just for gamers though, but also for people that say want to run Photoshop, or if you're doing any kind of intensive computing. If they keep going through with this, I'm starting to feel that itch again, where I'm going to start telling people, I mean, I tell people this already anyway, but if we want to actually use our computers and do what we want with our computers, it's time to go to Linux. And look, I mean, for the past few decades, like if you want to get shit done, Windows is a great platform to do that on. I just did a whole special on Patreon about, like the default loadout of software that I use on my Windows machine. Again, I have other machines, okay, but that's what I use. And rock and roll, okay. But I think we're getting to the point where a lot of that independent software that's so handy may not work on Windows anymore. Like it's really pointing in that direction, or at least it won't work as well because it's, based within an emulation layer. I have concerns around that. So yeah, I mean, people have been saying it for 20 years or hell, almost 30 years, but the year of Linux might be coming up pretty fast again. I don't want to call it, but everybody always says that. But maybe it's time to start getting used to Linux, because some of this is a little concerning now that they want Windows Core to actually be the operating system across the board, not just for devices that maybe needed a lighter load. That bothers me. So anyway, putting that out there. Here's some other good news. I thought this was a nice little addition. This was pretty cool. One of my favorite companies out there and favorite services, that being DuckDuckGo, they did a major overhaul of their mobile app, and it's now called the DuckDuckGo Privacy Browser. Okay, so what this is it's sort of a mixture. It more works like the Google app does, where it brings up where it's, because the Google app particularly on Android, okay, functions as, it's a search engine, but then it also functions as the web browser because it has such deep integration with Chrome, right? And so it's kind of this weird hybrid of being the web browser and the search engine at the same time. Well, now DuckDuckGo has done that too, where when you can't get the classic app anymore either, and there's actually kind of problems with that. I'll describe that in a second. But with the DuckDuckGo privacy browser that came out, and I think this is for iOS and Android. So it'll come up, it'll have the, like the search bar that you can type into. Okay. You can do that. You type into it and use it. And then it opens up everything. It works just like the Google app does. And it'll come up with the web browser and everything. Now the cool part is that there is a bookmarks feature, so you can save your searches or save the sites that you go to within it. So you could almost use this as your web browser if you don't do a whole lot of web browsing on your mobile device. And if you do do a lot of that on your mobile device, well, then you're using Mozilla Firefox, hopefully on Android. This is, and it's matching sort of, what was the one that Mozilla also came out with, not Firefox Private, but the Firefox Focus, I think was the name of it. Anyway, it kind of works like that, where it's just this very basic privacy based. I mean, like they try to go with encrypting connections. There's all this different stuff that they're doing within it. And there's a cool little like a flame icon at the top of the app, And when you hit that, it just clears everything that you were just doing, and it deletes it all. And I think that that's pretty cool. DuckDuckGo is so important. You want to be using that more so than Google for a bunch of reasons, but one is they don't collect data about you. Now, they didn't just come out with that. They also came out with a new extension. This extension it's called DuckDuckGo Privacy Essentials. I think it's for Safari, Firefox, and Chrome. And Privacy Essentials, what it will do is, and this is actually really important, and I'm glad that this is here. So it'll put the add-on or extension in your, up at where it put in your web browser where it puts all of those, okay? And you can click on it, and then it will give you a privacy grade for the website. Like I think Google gets a C or something. I mean, it should get an F. Their own website, DuckDuckGo.com, obviously gets an A. It'll give you that kind of breakdown, which I think is pretty cool. And there's different metrics of what makes it private. Are they collecting information, et cetera? And that's based on various WOT concepts and technologies, I think. And then also what's even better about that, what I really like about it, is that it verifies the connection that you have if it's encrypted, and it can show you the certificate for the SSL certificate for the site that you're going to. Now, what's great about that is that even Firefox has kind of been rough about this, but the major web browsers have gone back and forth on how they display certificate information in the address bar in your web browser, to the point that I think Chrome almost took it completely away at one point. So this is really handy to be able to do that, because if it really counts, you want to make sure that you are genuinely connected. That when it says HTTPS in the address bar, if it even says that you're really connected. And so this is a very nice, almost like a little diagnostic tool that they've put on. So I recommend installing this on everything you've got. Okay, the Privacy Essentials. You might not find as much use for the privacy browser. In fact, I'm a little disheartened, and we might get into this a little more during HackSec. Kind of one of my issues with this is that the DuckDuckGo app before, which I used a lot, okay, for Android, had this kind of nice feature, sort of like what Google does now, and maybe they'll reintroduce this, I don't know, where it will come up with little cards of stories, and just random stories that I'm not exactly sure what their metric is of what comes up as important. Okay, but they'll come up with those little stories. And also the classic DuckDuckGo app, it could be a browser as well, so that's not not necessarily a new feature, but it allowed you to search Tor. Now, the Tor browser is up to the official Tor browser that you can put on desktops is up to version 7, is it 7.5 or something? And that actually it's 7.5. Well, so that version, of course, the version numbers would be different now because they used to base them on Firefox version numbers. Anyway, so what they're calling version 7.5, and that's using Onion 3.0, okay, which has dramatically changed the way that Onion sites and services, the security of those. So maybe DuckDuckGo, because now the privacy browser, as far as I could tell, and I was looking and I couldn't find any answers online if anybody did it. I tested it out myself. I could not access Onion websites with the DuckDuckGo privacy browser. As to where before, I could even, and there was a setting within the actual DuckDuckGo app on Android where you could say, enable Tor functionality and all this different stuff, and you could search Tor. Maybe because of Onion 3.0, they're not allowing for that. That's something I'm looking into. So this is nice. It's a very simple thing, and it looks a lot like Google. And it's good that it works like the Google app overall, because what I actually, in my book, in my Dark Android 2017 edition, in that book, I recommended switching your virtual assistant or your assistant that comes up when you hold the home button on your Android phone. I recommended switching it to DuckDuckGo instead of having Google come up, okay, for obvious reasons, because it's fucking Google, okay? And now, if it looks just like Google when it comes up, so much the better. This way people can, they don't feel like they're losing any real functionality or feature sets or anything like that. So I thought that that's pretty nice. We'll see how, I'm sure they're going to keep improving this, but I definitely recommend these, go ahead and install them. If anything, definitely install the DuckDuckGo Privacy Essentials on your desktop browser, and you should be using your desktop more than your smartphone anyway, because, fuck them. So, hey, you got some actionable stuff already in this episode. Go for it. a story that I don't think I'm going to be able to spend a ton of time on, but I don't know if you heard this. I think the Intercept was reporting on it this week, but the NSA changed their core values, which, like, they have core values besides protect tyranny, destroy privacy and all that. No, really. Apparently honesty was one of their core values, and that got removed. So there it is. And in fact, there's no mention of it whatsoever of honesty. And they changed a bunch of other stuff too. Maybe I'll get to that in a future episode, or maybe I'll put it in a Sovereign Tech newsletter. But, oh man, fucking government. Anyway, we'll be right back with some more Sovereign Tech. We got some good stuff to talk about in the next segment for our story of the week. I'll be right back. Hey, Slapnuts, you want to start investing in crypto? Let me tell you how to get started investing in crypto. This is awesome. In fact, I've already heard from Sovereign Tech listeners, some you mentioned on Twitter and other places, where you said, oh yeah, I'm popping balloons. What the hell am I talking about popping balloons and investing in crypto? What is this? It's Heleum, baby. If you want to start investing in cryptos without you having to do any of the busy work, check out Heleum, a long-term savings accelerator powered by Uphold.com. Okay, Heleum watches conversion rates between cryptos and fiats for you so it can convert your funds when the time is right. It's doing this all automatically. You just add your funds into Heleum from your bank or digital wallet and you're done. Again, the rest is completely automatic. It does all the conversion rates, takes advantage of all the ups and downs that's going on, monetarily. It's great. So let your money move you with Heleum. Sign up today. Go to HELEUM.com. HELEUM.com/sovereign. Okay? HELEUM.com/sovereign. That's SOVRYN. And you can get signed up. Make sure you use that /sovereign though at the end of it. Okay? Let them know that you heard about it. From the Golden Stallion. So, all right, try out Heleum. Get investing in cryptos. It's an exciting time. Let's get back to the show.
Story of the week.
It is time for Story of the Week. And so Sovereign Tech is really the show that's all about science and technology, not just tech. We like to get into the science of things. And really, tech has become, and I know this isn't going to surprise anybody, tech has become so like even the most benign and what you would think would be the most totally only in San Francisco would they use this sort of thing, kind of tech, even though you think that wouldn't have anything to do with your life. Now it's all inclusive, it's all pervasive, it's all there. Okay, so a tech show can really talk about anything today, quite frankly. And in fact, a lot of them are, and this show has always been that way, because it's really, if you buy a Sovereign Tech t-shirt, right, store.sovereigntech.com, if you buy one of the t-shirts, what does it say on the back? Everybody knows what it says in the back. It says, be the future. All right. And so being the future, that comes with a lot of different things to talk about. And I think an interesting thing to talk about, especially, and this is what I was mentioning earlier, if you're visiting New Hampshire, now a lot of people, and I get this, I understand. Okay. I've lived in California. I've lived in Florida. I've lived in places all around the world. All right, where the temperature does not hit the extremes of cold, like the present winter that we are experiencing right now in New Hampshire, or the snowstorms or things like this, and this sort of thing doesn't happen. And I know that there's a lot of people who really, they get depressed, in the winter, and they don't like the cold and all this, and I understand a lot of it, and they want to live in certain areas. And like I said, I really, really get it. But there are people out there who, actually, I kind of describe myself as one. I call myself cryophilic, who really revel in living in these kind of conditions. And I think that there's a mindset that goes along with that. Now, there was an interesting story a couple of years ago, and I'm actually going to cover it now. And the story was from Fast Company. It's the Norwegian secret to enjoying a long winter. And this is the point, is that in a lot of these a lot of parts of the world, not your Floridas or anything like that, not your tropical areas, but in these snowy areas, like, people have really adapted, and they've just learned to, appreciate life as it is and have a different mindset about things. And so I want you to consider some of this, okay? Because it's one of the biggest questions that I get asked all the time. Why do you love the snow? Well, I'll fucking tell you why I like the snow. And that's part of what this is going to get into, okay? So here it is, the Norwegian secret to enjoying a long winter. Residents of Norway view their long, dark winters as something to celebrate. how it's possible to be cheerful for the next 4 months. And of course, really in New Hampshire, well, we're in January 2018 right now, or should I say 2018 HE, and that, into April, it could still snow here, or we could certainly be experiencing very cold temperatures well into April. In fact, since I've lived in New Hampshire, I experienced, I think there was a Memorial weekend where it snowed. So that can happen. So you might want to know how to enjoy it. And here it is. As the days get darker and colder in much of the northern hemisphere, it's easy to indulge in gloom. For the next few months, you'll be shivering. You'll be battling foul weather. Thanks to daylight savings time, there will be no chance to see the sun after work. The gloom leads to a common question. What can I do to cope with the dark and cold? If you truly want to be happy during winter, though, this is the wrong approach to the season. Changing your mindset can do more than distracting yourself from the weather. That's the takeaway from research done by Carrie Leibowitz, currently a PhD at Stanford University, who spent August 2014 to June 2015 on a Fulbright scholarship in Tromsø in northern Norway. Tromsø is so far north that from late November to late January, the sun never climbs above the horizon. Leibowitz went to study the residents' overall mental health because rates of seasonal depression were lower than one might expect. Now, Stallion breaking in for a second. So there's such a thing as seasonal affective disorder, okay, where people like it just completely affects them and there's not much they can do about it. Like changing your mindset might not help, okay? I want to be sensitive to that. I know that sort of thing is very legit. But maybe there's something, maybe it's not. Maybe you don't have seasonal affective disorder and maybe a change of mindset really would work. And really the first thing to say about this is that, and this is what I don't think a lot of people realize. Even me, who I enjoy the cold, like I revel in it, and maybe I'll talk more about that after we get through some of the points brought up in this article. Okay, like you barely spend any time in the cold. Like if you don't want to, you go from your garage to your car. You go, your car is in the garage and you don't even your garage is probably pretty cold, but you just go from your house to your car. You don't even experience the snow. You can get right into your car if you have a garage. If the car is outside, whatever, you take a little walk outside. Your car could be pre-warmed up. You have a car starter or something. And when you get into it, it's already 72 degrees or 74 degrees, whatever you want in your car. Okay. Like really, people don't experience that much cold if they don't want to. Okay. So the cold isn't so much, maybe, if it's like, well, I'm not seeing the sun or it's not this, those are different situations, but the cold itself, nobody really has to experience that anymore. And there's plenty of ways around that. You don't even have to go out and do your driveway, especially in a place like New Hampshire. There's plenty of people you can hire that would take care of that for you, or maybe even the town or, wherever you happen to live takes care of it, whatever the situation is. Yeah, I get it, but, come on, let's be honest with ourselves. How much do we really, and it's the same thing down south, okay, the heat's bad. Sure it is. But is it, how, if you really wanted to, you could be in air-conditioned conditions most of the time, and you don't even have to experience the heat. So, the argument certainly can go both ways. But that's the thing. We live in a very temperature-controlled society, and we can take advantage of that if we want to. So I don't exactly buy that argument. But, even then, some people are also kind of naturally cold, all the time, and I can get that too. But I'm just saying that's something that can be handled. So, okay, if anything, yeah, you don't have to turn up the heat. I don't know, just like we were talking about last week, just cuddle, and get some bodies around you and whatever. That's a great reason to have friends, I think. But let's read on. At first, she was asking, why aren't people here more depressed? And if there were lessons that could be taken elsewhere. But once she was there, quote, I sort of realized that that was the wrong question to be asking. Why, when she asked people, why don't you have seasonal depression? The answer was, why would we? It turns out that in northern Norway, quote, people view winter as something to be enjoyed, not something to be endured, end quote. So reading here, let's see. To be sure, there are more aspects of the near-polar culture that might be hard to emulate elsewhere. Small Norwegian communities are tightly knit, and strong social ties increase well-being everywhere. That said, there are lessons that can help anyone think differently about cold weather. Now, I want to stop there because that kind of hints at the last thing I was just saying, is that there's something to be said for any kind of conditions that are around you, whether it's winter or whether, it could be some kind of, social turmoil or some kind of bullshit going on. It's amazing what a tightly knit community, even if it's just a small group of friends of 3 to 5 or 15 people or something like that have really deep social ties that can get you through so much. And I think that's part of what leads to a lot of depression with a lot of these things, is that people feel a lack of connectedness. And where are they trying to get their connectedness? They're going online, which no winter is as cold as talking to people on Facebook. There, I said it. I really see it that way. There's nothing colder. You lose so much when you rely upon interacting in these ways. Get together. And it's amazing what you can not endure, but enjoy. So let's read a little bit. First, Norwegians celebrate the things one can only do in winter. Quote, people couldn't wait for the ski season to start, end quote, says Leibowitz. Getting outside is a known mood booster, and so Norwegians keep going outside, whatever is happening out there. Notes Leibowitz, quote, there's a saying that there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing, end quote. Woo, I love that. Okay. Right? Like, you can endure anything as long as you have the clothes. I mean, and this is it. Again, this is more to that point of being in a temperature controlled kind of society. We don't have to go hunt down more sheepskins or whatever skins, or we don't have to tan hides in the summer so that we can be warm in the winter. We don't live in that world anymore. And so, you can dress very warm if one needs to. Reading on, Norwegians also have a word, koselig, that means a sense of coziness. This is also Stallion breaking in. Also, there's the concept of hygge, and that's what it's called, hygge, which is feeling that warmth and and even degrees of community. I mean, people use that term for a lot. I think that's actually a Danish term, but kind of the same concept, I think. Reading on, it's like the best parts of Christmas without all the stress. People light candles, light fires, drink warm beverages, and sit under fuzzy blankets. There's a community aspect to it, too. It's not just an excuse to sit on the couch watching Netflix. Leibowitz reports that Tromsø had plenty of festivals and community activities, creating the sense that everyone was in it together. And finally, people are enamored with the sheer beauty of the season. Leibowitz grew up near the Jersey Shore and, quote, I just took it as a fact that everyone likes the summer best, end quote. But deep in the winter in Norway, when the sun doesn't rise above the horizon, multiple hours a day can still look like sunrise and sunset, and against the snow, quote, the colors are incredibly beautiful. The light is very soft and indirect, end quote, she says. So I want to talk about that for a second, because that's part of it that I totally get. Okay. Now, I've lived in New York City. Again, I've lived all around the world. Okay. Here's the thing, is that most cities, I think, actually kind of naturally look shitty, and they're dirty. And I mean, I don't know. They're not, I mean, there's some that are smaller cities that can be kind of quaint and everything, little villages and stuff like that. And those can be nice where everything's made out of brick or whatever. But the bulk of just about any city honestly looks like shit. I mean, I guess that, it's subjective and that's my opinion, but I really think so. And it's, there's cigarette butts everywhere. There's just all this crap, and everything's dirty, and not that dirt is some kind of inherent evil. Okay. But you get my point. One of the things I've always loved, because of having to live in cities a lot growing up, one of the things I've always loved about the winter is that white snow just covers everything and the world is gorgeous. Things that look so old suddenly look stunning because they're covered with that powder. And I love that. There's a peace that really comes with that. And I mean, even, you could say the roads are ugly or whatever, but then there's an advantage to that, right? Because sure, the roads are slushy, but guess what? Most people aren't on the roads. And that's the other nice thing about winter too, is that people kind of stay home. And so if you're daring enough, if you're brave enough, the world is yours because you're willing to go outside. You're not concerned about bad weather. You're just making sure you're not wearing bad clothes, right? Like the Norwegians say. I love that. And everything's so quiet because people aren't out, doing whatever. And you can enjoy the beauty that's out there. And if you're not in the city, I mean, nature looks remarkable in the winter. You just dress for it, you know. And I think like learning to love that, instead of seeing it as the cold, see it as the beauty. I really love that concept of changing your mindset on what's going on and all the fun that you can have. I mean, there's nothing better than snowboarding, sledding, all this different stuff. I mean, having little snowball fights and whatever else. I mean, all that is just so wild. And even just walking through it is oh man, it's so beautiful, but you got to appreciate it for that. And I don't know, maybe it happened to me. Maybe I became cryophilic. I mean, I have a pretty good tolerance for cold too, but maybe I became more cryophilic, which means that I thrive and love the cold and the winter. And that's been on like my Twitter handle forever, by the way. That's not like a new word for me. Maybe I became that just because, I did grow up in the city. I did grow up around so much noise, like in New York City, and so much bullshit and everything going on. And it's all just so phony. And then suddenly there's like these few months where things are they quiet down, they calm down, and things are more peaceful, and you can be more introspective, and you can, let your imagination run wild, be more creative. And that's another thing too. I think this is the thing that excites children, especially with the winter, is that suddenly, when you have snow covering everything, it's like there's Legos everywhere. And you can build anything. When I was growing up, I mean, like I'd take out my action figures and like the snowdrift would form and everything. And I would like kind of carve out a little, almost like an Echo base from The Empire Strikes Back and Star Wars, right? And I'd have all my little figures in there. I mean, like I suddenly had all these toys around me, and it was just stuff that I could make out of snow. It was fucking great. Hell, even the little G.I. Joes or whatever action figure I happen to be using, like you could plant them in the snow and they'd stand there. Oh, it's awesome. And I think that's what people miss. Like, that's why kids love it so much, is because, again, like suddenly the snow is all around, and there's this, tremendous creative tool. In the world, there's a difference to the world. Like, you get to experience everything differently. And because it really looks different. And I think it appeals to a very real passion within the human condition, which is novelty, which is an important one. And it's an important one to foster. I think winter is absolutely phenomenal. I want to read a little bit of what's left of the story, and then maybe I'll talk about it a little more. But anyways, the next next section is a mindset shift. Most likely you can't cross-country ski straight out of your house. And while Norwegian sweaters may be catching on, restaurants and coffee shops in more temperate climates don't all feature the fireplaces and candles common to the far north. Still, there are little things non-Norwegians can do. Quote, one of the things we do a lot in the States is we bond by complaining about the winter. It's hard to have a positive wintertime mindset when we make small talk by being negative about the winter, end quote, says Leibowitz. Stallion breaking in for a second. Yeah, I don't complain about the winter. Like I said, I revel in it, because I appreciate it for what it is. I enjoy even just the novelty of it, even though it happens every year, more or less. But I mean, it doesn't always happen the same way. I even enjoy the sub-zero temperatures and all that, like just breathing in that air. There's such that crispness, all that feels good. And again, you can take it in for as long as you want, for seconds, minutes, hell, hours if you really want to, because we don't live in a world where, it's so hard to get warm. No, you go in the fucking house and you turn up the heat. This isn't hard, I'm never ever negative about the winter, and again, there's people who have very real conditions where I want to empathize with them on that, and maybe it's not for everybody, but I do just revel in it. Let me read the last bit. This is easy enough to change. Simply refuse to participate in the misery Olympics. Talk about how the cold gives you a chance to drink tea or hot chocolate all day. Talk about ice skating or building snowmen. Bundle up and go for a walk outside, knowing that you'll likely feel warmer and happier after a few minutes. Stallion breaking in. Yes, you will. Better yet, go with a friend. Woo! That's what I'm talking about. Social plans are a great reason to haul yourself out from under the covers. But overall, mindset research is increasingly finding that it doesn't take much to shift one's thinking. Quote, it doesn't have to be this huge, complicated thing. You can just consciously try to have a positive wintertime mindset, and that might be enough to induce it. End quote, says Leibowitz. I love that. You know what I love? And look, I get all hot and bothered on this show, and I complain about shit all the time, but it's a warning. It's because, look, there's a technical issue. We got to talk about this. We got to cover it. You got to do something about it. Okay. Because, the more people that are secure and securing their devices and computers and everything, the better off we all are. Okay. But yeah, there are things that like you're complaining for complaint's sake and to try to come up with some kind of connection. The Misery Olympics. Fuck the Misery Olympics. Fuck right in the neck. The Golden Stallion doesn't want to play in that. You don't need to either. Yeah, we haven't, goddamn slapnuts in office, okay? We got Pizza the Hut in office. There's there's no doubt about it. There are genuinely terrible things going on. But at the same time, especially when you choose like where you want to live, or maybe you want to live in places, this is one of the advantages, of I think moving north. Okay, is that a lot of people that are there? Yeah, there's a lot of people there because that's where they've always been. But then there's also a lot of people there, like consider even like something as crazy as Alaska. A lot of people are there because they had the intent, because they had the temerity, the guts, the ability, to want to be there. And there's something to be said for living in a place where people move there because they want to be there. There's kind of a natural, a happiness, a peace, I think that can kind of come out of that. And that's what I love about going out in the winter, is that the people that are outside, they want to be outside. They're not playing in the Misery Olympics. They're being very intentional in what they're doing. Go out with friends. Feel that joy. I want that all the time because, like I was going to say, okay, yep, there's terrible shit going on, but at the same time, life is fucking amazing. Every single day is remarkable, and you can make it remarkable. Even in sub-zero temperatures, even in the winter, it can be incredible. You decide the outcome. You choose your mindset in a very real sense, okay? Like I said, I want to be sensitive. There are some people where it's not so much a choice. I understand. But for so many of us, it is. What's important to me is having my friends, my loved ones, my friends, lovers, whatever, having them with me. That's what matters. I don't care if it's Greenland. I don't care if it's Alaska. I don't care if it's New Hampshire. Rather prefer it. I don't care where it is. What matters to me more is the tight, and that's how this whole article started, is the tight-knit, social ties and all that. That's what I want. I mean, it's almost like a John Milton thing, right? Was it Paradise Lost or whatever? Better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. Better to live in the cold and have your friends around you than live somewhere and have to rely on fucking social media to have connections with human beings. That's not a goddamn connection. No thanks. I'd like to stay out of the Misery Olympics, and the way you do that is that you get your friends and you get with your friends. We need the human touch. Let's go after it. Doesn't matter what the temperature is outside. I'll be right back with more. Woo! Talk about touching something, getting something in your hand. Maybe you want to get your hands, you want to store some wealth in something that's physical that you can really, like I said, really get your hands on, get that human touch on. That is gold and silver, platinum, palladium, all those precious metals. And if you want to do that, there's one place to go. Okay, and they've been a long-time Sovryn Tech sponsor. You go to rrbi.co. That's Roberts and Roberts Brokerage. That's their website, rrbi.co. You let them know that the Golden Stallion sent you, okay? You can even buy precious metals with Bitcoin. Big fan of cryptos, are you? You should be. And you should be a big fan of precious metals as well. So use one to get the other. Go ahead, diversify things. Get that real cold storage in this cold New Hampshire weather. Well, you're not in New Hampshire. Well, some of you are, but you know what I mean. Get your hands on it. Diversify your wealth. Okay. I mean, it's a great thing to add to what you've got going on as far as your investments go. Okay. Get gold and silver. Go to Roberts Brokerage, rrbi.co. Do it. And I cannot thank them enough for being such a longtime sponsor of Sovryn Tech. Woo! Let's get back to the show.
HackSec.
It is time for HackSec, where we talk issues of hacking and security. And, well, quite frankly, we have good news and we have bad news this week. In fact, the bad news is very bad. But regardless, I want to add on a little bit to what I was just saying there. Look, I know I was saying move. You don't have to move to New Hampshire. You pick your spot, okay? But just, get into that, for lack of a better term, this term gets used for a lot of things, but for lack of a better term, get with some kind of intentional community of friends, people that you gather with, whatever. Look, I know I needed that. Okay. Granted, I was cold hardened, already because I spent, most of my life in New York, and a lot of it in upstate New York as well, where, there's no wind. There are very few winters in the world worse than what you get in upstate New York. But look, I hopped in an SUV. I had my SUV. I hopped in that and I drove to New Hampshire, and I lived out of that SUV for months. In sub-zero weather at times. I had a sleeping bag, the whole thing. I've been tempted to write a book about it because a lot of people ask me about that, and I've done specials on Patreon explaining how to do it if you want to do it. But my point is that if you are missing this stuff, if you are, if you're feeling depression and a lot of these other things, and I can't say how sensitive I am to a lot of this, how sensitive I want to be to whatever you're going through, but you've got to want it that bad that you're like, motherfucker, I'm going to get in an SUV. I don't care how cold it is. I'll buy a negative 60 degree rated, Fahrenheit rated sleeping bag, whatever it takes. But I need to be around people like me. I need to be amongst real friends, I need to be amongst real connections. I will not settle for, long distance bullshit, for having to rely on texts, for having to do all this. I won't do it anymore. You've got to want it that bad that you're willing to go through that. And changing your mindset can go a long way to making that more of a reality, okay? Happiness is everything. Go for it with an absolute fucking vengeance. Now, that said, let's keep the good news going a little bit here for HackSec, okay? But a new version of the Tor browser is out, 7.5. We mentioned it earlier. It is using Onion Services 3.0, which helps really encrypt and keep anonymous a lot of these services and sites that are on Tor. It does it more so. Tor has always been great about, anonymizing you, the user, but some of the services and things like that, there have been issues that have been recorded, and we've talked about some of them over the years on this show. So, glad that they're taking advantage of Onion Services 3.0, which I'm glad for that. That's good. The other thing is that they're now starting to take very seriously trying to circumvent various like the Great Firewall of China, where VPNs are starting to lose their luster, shall we say. So they have nice features in that where you can choose from different built-in bridges and everything. And this is maybe the most important thing that I noticed when I was looking at the new version of the Tor browser is the UI the user interface is getting really simple, like really simple. That's a good thing, because then more people can use it. Like they have in the security settings, like now it almost looks like what Microsoft set up like 15 years ago, like I think when Vista first came out or whatever, where it's like a slider where you have safest, safer, and standard, and it explains what each one of those does when it disables, JavaScript on sites that aren't HTTPS and all that. Like, I mean, they're doing really nice work here. This is a vast improvement, especially when it comes to the UI. So do make sure that you update that. And there's other things too, because now they're finally taking. They're not really jumping on board with Firefox Quantum, because of course the Tor browser is based off of Firefox, though that probably will happen where they'll be running on Firefox Quantum once we get to like version 60, which, like I said, with Firefox we're up to version 58 right now. But when it gets to version 60, which is their like an ESR release where it's an extended support release, when it gets to that, then Tor browser will actually be significantly faster because it's going to, make use of the multiprocess architecture of Firefox Quantum. So that'll be big. That I don't recall what the release schedule is for Firefox 60, but it should be coming up fast. So, but the nice thing is that it is taking advantage of what Firefox is doing with the partial sandboxing within Windows. Now, generally, running Tor browser in Windows is not considered a secure thing to do. The Tor project themselves will tell you don't do it, even though they still develop it for it. And with good reason. It's the most, for all intents and purposes, it is the most used operating system in the world. Does it make sense for a tech show to talk about Windows? Obviously. Just like it makes sense for Tor to develop for Windows, okay, even though it's not the best thing to use. So anyway, but you do get that partial sandboxing that's going on, so that's nice. So Tor is a little more secure on Windows, a little more secure. But if you really want to do it right, of course, you use Tails, which is the operating, the Tor-based operating system. But that's a whole other conversation. So anyway, I would, just very pleased And I think they are working hard on the 64-bit version of the Tor browser for Windows as well. So, all this stuff is lining up, and this is a very nice release with 7.5. So there's the good news. On to the bad news. And damn it, I hate talking about bad news, but it's here. And I'll read the quick story on it from the EFF, and this is from January 18th, 2018. EFF and Lookout, which Lookout is popular for being an Android security platform that I actually think is useless, but whatever. They did something useful here. EFF and Lookout uncover new malware espionage campaign infecting thousands around the world. Mobile devices compromised by fake secure messaging clients. Hundreds of gigabytes of data stolen. The Electronic Frontier Foundation and mobile security company Lookout have uncovered a new malware espionage campaign infecting thousands of people in more than 20 countries. Hundreds of gigabytes of data has been stolen, primarily through mobile devices compromised by fake secure messaging clients. And this is where it gets, this is Stallion breaking in, this is where it gets really bad. Reading on, the Trojanized apps, including Signal and WhatsApp, function like the legitimate apps and send and receive messages normally. However, the fake apps also allow the attackers to take photos, retrieve location information, capture audio, and more. The threat, called Dark Caracal by EFF and Lookout researchers, let's be very clear on the wording there. It may be a nation-state actor that appears to employ shared infrastructure which has been linked to other nation-state actors. In a new report, EFF and Lookout traced Dark Caracal to a building belonging to the Lebanese General Security Directorate in Beirut. Quote, people in the U.S., Canada, Germany, Lebanon, and France have been hit by Dark Caracal. Targets include military personnel, activists, journalists, and lawyers, and the types of stolen data range from call records and audio recordings to documents and photos, end quote, said EFF Director of Cybersecurity Eva Galperin. Quote, this is a very large global campaign focused on mobile devices. Mobile is the future of spying because phones are full of so much data about a person's day-to-day life, end quote. Actually goes on, quote, Dark Caracal is part of a trend we've seen mounting over the past year, whereby traditional APT actors are moving toward using mobile as a primary target platform, end quote, said Mike Murray, Vice President of Security Intelligence at Lookout. Quote, the Android threat we identified as used by Dark Caracal is one of the first globally active APTs we have spoken publicly about, end quote. Dark Caracal has been operating since at least 2012. However, one reason it has been so hard to track is the diversity of seemingly unrelated espionage campaigns originating from the same domain names. The researchers believe that Dark Caracal is only one of a number of different global attackers using this infrastructure. Over the years, Dark Caracal's work has been repeatedly misattributed to other cybercrime groups. In fact, EFF's Operation Manual report from 2016 misidentified espionage from these servers as coming from the Indian security company APPEN. Quote, one of the interesting things about this ongoing attack is that it doesn't require a sophisticated or expensive exploit. Instead, all Dark Caracal needed was application permissions that users themselves granted when they downloaded the apps, not realizing that they contained malware. End quote, said EFF staff technologist Cooper Quinton. Quote, this research shows it's not difficult to create a strategy allowing people and governments to spy on targets around the world, end quote. Okay, let's get this out of the way right now. Signal is not broken. Before anybody says that, see, Signal's bad. Oh, shit. No. In fact, any of the apps involved themselves are not broken. That's not what happened here. It's not like somehow they cracked the encryption of Signal or WhatsApp or any of those messaging apps. And it's pretty much all of them. Telegram, a whole slew of them that this was used against. What happened is the apps were Trojanized, okay, which means that they were fake apps. And what they would do is, it'd be spear phishing, right? Where they would send out this wide net of emails, okay? And by the way, APT, Advanced Persistent Threat, that stands for, meaning that it's something that works for an extended amount of time and avoids its own avoids detection and all of that. That's what they meant by APT. And this is a serious, no doubt about it. This is a state, this is nation-state level stuff. That doesn't mean a nation-state did it. Wouldn't be surprised if one did, but it's at that level, how this was collecting all this data about people, even within apps like Signal and others. Okay, so this is the thing, is that what would happen is people would get emails where it would say, hey, update your app or something like that. They would click on the link in the email, and then that email would take them to a page that looked a lot like the Play Store or something like that. By the way, Dark Caracal, iOS was not affected at all by any of this. But then again, you don't know with iOS if, Apple isn't collecting everything that's going on about you anyway, because it's not open source. Regardless. So this would trick you into downloading a fake version of whatever app you happen to be using. And again, even if it was Signal, it would work like Signal. It would have all that, just there'd be that little bit of extra code within it, and it would be asking for just those little bit of extra permissions that most people probably wouldn't pay a whole lot of attention to. And then they'd say, oh, okay, and they'd use it, and it would allow whoever was deploying Dark Caracal to collect all of it. Okay. Now, I mean, but there's nothing really you can do about this. The only thing you can do about Dark Caracal, this is bad. The only thing you can do is make sure that you're not, that where you're installing your apps from is where they should be. Like if you download it from the Google Play Store, you're probably not affected by Dark Caracal. Like it's a 99.9999%. I mean, you're probably not. However, there's a flip side to this. Okay. So make sure you're installing stuff. Pay attention to what permissions an app is asking for. If it doesn't need to access your camera, don't let it. If it doesn't need to access audio, don't let it. Now, Signal does like to ask for those things because it has a camera function built into it. It does allow you to do voice calls, so it does need access to your microphone and all that. Understand it, but pay attention to those things all the same. Okay, but here's the thing: is that if it were a nation state, can the NSA, which, again, took honesty out of their core values, if the NSA, could they compel Google to put in a flawed version of Signal? Yes, they could. Obviously, I don't think that's a stretch at all for them to do that. That could allow for the collection of various data. Yeah, absolutely. Now, can Open Whisper Systems check on their code for their app to make sure that, because it's open source, to make sure that, the NSA didn't do that sort of thing? Yes. But I don't know, and maybe this is something I need to ask around about. I don't know how quickly they could react to that. As to where, maybe what the NSA wants from that, they only need a few minutes. This speaks to, on one sense, the problem is that people are downloading apps from, that allow for this, just complete control over mobile devices, over data collection on their mobile devices. Okay. In one sense, that the problem there is because they're not downloading the apps from trusted sources from like the Google Play Store or something on Android. Again, iOS wasn't affected by this, as far as I know. And okay, but then at the same time, like those trusted sources, how much do you trust those trusted sources, right? Like how much do you trust Google? Obviously, I would tell you, don't you fucking dare trust Google for a second with their Play Store. Worth anything. You can say, well, what about Android? Okay, well, here's the thing. Okay, here's if you want my like extreme recommendation about what to do about this, I'll tell you what. You get a phone, okay, and you get the right model phone. You install Lineage OS on it. LINEAGEOS. You install Lineage OS. That way it's not Google's Android. Okay? If you want to be really extreme, you can install Replicant OS. But that's a whole other ballgame and requires a whole other mindset. All right, but you install Lineage OS. Again, look, I'm not promising perfect security. Nobody should be promising perfect security, but you're making it expensive against the people that it matters. And that's what you do, is you make it expensive, and that's worthwhile. We said earlier, all those little rebellions, that you want to do, that's one of the great joys in life. Well, here's a little rebellion for you. You install Lineage OS, okay, on the phone, and now Signal in particular, and that's really the only messaging app you really need, and especially like even on a phone, and if you want to use Facebook Messenger, we'll use it on your desktop, that actually, there's a broader point with that too, but there is a website. Open Whisper Systems allows you to, on Android, or in this case Lineage OS, allows you to download the latest versions of Signal independently. Okay, and they are keeping a much closer eye on their own APKs that they put up on their own site as compared to the ones that are probably in the Google Play Store. Not that I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong with the Google or that Open Whisper Systems is doing anything wrong with what's in the Play Store. I'm just saying that like it's a safer bet. So that's what I would do. I would install Lineage OS. If you want to go the extreme route, I would install Lineage OS, and then I would download Signal independently from Open Whisper Systems themselves, and not download it even from the Play Store. Okay, if I didn't have clients that made it another way, that's all I would probably have in my pocket. That's all I would do. And, here's the other thing too, is that they made EFF and Lookout both made the point, hey, mobile is the real attack vector here. So what's a great way to solve something like Dark Caracal happening? And like they said, that there's going to be more of these APTs, advanced persistent threats, are going to go after mobile more and more and more and more and more. Stop relying on mobile. Stop putting all of your shit on mobile. Back off from mobile. And then you're automatically creating a more secure environment and and less attack vectors on your life, which is something we've been saying on Sovryn Tech for at least 5 years. Rely more on your laptop. You have a lot more options when it comes to your laptop. Fuck, you can even run, Signal now has a desktop client that you can run on there. Okay? And if you're downloading Signal independently on your smartphone, you're good. But otherwise, there's nothing you can do about this. There's nothing to do. Yeah, be very, don't click links in emails, or at least be very, very, very cautious with what you click within emails. Back off of email a bit, perhaps. Like all of these, pay attention to what they are using as attack vectors, and then see how you can start cutting them out of your life. That's how you solve this, because there's no, it's not a 0-day exploit. It's literally, they're just, it's malware that they're just, it's not even really it's like Trojanware, I guess would be, they're Trojanized apps. They're apps that, will register as totally legit because they act and function totally legit. But then they also have this little extra thing that they're doing, okay, where they're collecting your data and who knows, your photos, audio, whatever else. So there's really nothing like technical to do. There's no software you're going to install that's going to find this. There's nothing, not really. There's nothing like that. The problem is you're installing apps that, again, function more or less normally. You're even giving the apps permission. So why would security software say there's a problem? But there's that little bit of extra code in there. So there's not much you can do. This is bad. This is a really, really bad exploit. No doubt about that. But the solutions are there. Okay, and I rattled them off if you want to go that route, if you're concerned about this. And the non-extreme solution is, make sure and this would also mean to probably don't use F-Droid, even though I totally recommend F-Droid. But only install software from the Google Play Store and make sure you're getting it from the Google Play Store. There you go. Turn off the untrusted. Another thing you can do is in Android specifically, you can turn off the untrusted third-party apps feature. You can untick that, okay, in your settings and have that go. I guess the other option is you could buy an iOS device, but I don't know. I think that raises a whole lot of other concerns. Not that I get it, and I've said it before. I said out of the box, iOS is absolutely the most secure. One of the most secure devices you could have, just out of the box is an iPhone or like an iPad or something. So, but you're trusting granddaddy Apple. Don't be confused by that. That's an absolute fact. So Dark Caracal, this is bad. This is showing how easily this can happen. And I think that it could happen even when they say, if you want to be really extreme about it, like I said, even if they say, well, just make sure you're downloading from the Google Play Store. Well, guess who has the keys to the kingdom of the Google Play Store? The U.S. government. So even that should be a little bit concerning as to where I think Open Whisper Systems, I trust them a lot more. Why? Well, one, they're anarchists. They're literal anarchists. And I've already seen them stand up to the government, and do things right. And they operate their entire business model so that they don't have to interact or hand things over as much as possible to the U.S. government. So anyway, so there you go. There's some solutions for that. There's some warning that it's out there. If you want to, on the safe side, if you don't know if you've done this at all, you may want to uninstall. Like if you use Signal or a lot of your messaging apps, you may want to, uninstall them and then reinstall them from the Google Play Store, knowing that it's good. That's not a terrible idea to go through. Okay. Oh, is that a pain in the ass? Well, that's the thing. There's always the trade-off between security and convenience. You're going to have to lose some convenience when you want to do this shit right. Anyway, we'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Woo! Hey, wow, you want to talk about a real solution to a lot of this? I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of our infrastructure just fucking sucks that makes up the internet, okay? So how about we get to something, maybe an alternative to that, maybe something that takes the best parts of like Tor and takes the best parts of Bitcoin and takes the best parts of all these different technologies and puts them into one. How about a platform like Zen? I want you to check out a Sovryn Tech sponsor. I am so honored to have them as a sponsor. It's one of the few technologies that has really excited me to no end in recent years, and that is ZenCash. Go to ZenCash.com. That's the website. This is everything. It's money. It's media. It's messaging. You want to send secure messages? Oh, baby, use it through ZenCash. I'm serious. You're going to love it. Check it out. Go to ZenCash.com. And if you want to start collecting your own Zen, because it's a cryptocurrency among other things, okay, if you want to get some right now, totally for free, and yes, you can, you go to getzen.cash. That's the website. Getzen.cash, and you can get the hookup. ZenCash is building the future. It really is, with secure nodes and all the other things you can do. Believe me, if you haven't heard about it, you just heard about it, and you need to go check it out. ZenCash.com, and I thank them for believing in Sovryn Tech, because I'll tell you, I believe in them. Woo! Thank you for sponsoring the show. We'll be right back with some more.
GameTalk.
It is time for GameTalk, where, after dark Caracal, boy, I could use some video gaming. I could stand to play some, I don't know, Mario Kart 7 or something. I need something. Give me the hookup. Or maybe Wasteland 2. That's one of my favorites. Can't wait for Wasteland 3. Anyway, got a couple things to talk about here. One of which actually really affects the show in a very, very real sense. But this one isn't the one that's affecting the show. So it was announced that, and it's at thec64.com, as in the, and then the letter C, and then 64.com. Certainly one thing that is becoming a really big deal today, I mean, retro gaming's been a big deal for a while. Actual gamers know that this has been on the rise. But pretty much once the NES Classic came out, or the NES Mini, depending what part of the world you're in, that, the beautiful little Nintendo, as soon as that came out, and then the SNES, Classic and the SNES Mini, whatever came out, which I love mine, by the way, people are like, oh, wow, there's actually a ton of money in doing this. And so some companies are starting to come out with their own minis, one of them being the C64 Mini, which, if you don't know what C64 stands for, that stands for Commodore 64. Now, I am very skeptical about this. They say it's coming out in 2018. Someone sent it to me. What do you think? It apparently is going to support 720p, which it might as well, if it's just going to play C64 games. I mean, for fuck's sake, do you really need 1080p for that? It'll be in the 4:3 ratio that it'll put it up, which is similar. The SNES Classic, or the SNES Mini, depending on what you want to call it, does the same thing. And you can create these custom borders around the 4:3 ratio if you want to. It'll have a save game function. It has 2 USB ports where you can plug in a USB keyboard and use it effectively as a fully functioning computer with the the operating system of C64 Basic, or it allows you to put in more joysticks and everything. It'll come with one joystick, but the USB ports will allow you to add another joystick if you need to, and it will support software updates apparently via USB, which is one of the things. So to comment on that quick, and they haven't said all of the games that are going to be there, or that are going to be available for it. They do have a list of some of the ones that'll be included. One of the complaints that some people had about the NES Classic and the SNES Classic that came out over the past 2 years is that there's no way to update them. And there's there's ways, because there is a USB port on there, but that's mainly for power. And anyway, people say, well, you could kind of figure out how to make it happen, but regardless, people didn't like that you couldn't add games. I mean, you can. People have figured out how to add games. Again, you can hook it up to a computer through the USB power port. But, I saw that as a good thing. Make it something that you buy and it just lasts you forever. It has everything on there, and you don't need to add anything to it, and you play those games forever, because most of those games people have played forever, on the NES Classic as well as the SNES Classic. So I don't see that as such a big deal. In fact, I almost have a problem with the fact that the C64, can take software updates. I like the hardened nature of the NES Classic because then, it doesn't potentially become any kind of, attack vector somehow. Like we were just talking about attack vectors, throughout the whole last segment. So I'm a little concerned about that. And the other part that I think is kind of stupid about this, and then we've got other things to talk about, that I think is stupid about the Commodore 64 Mini, is that the beauty of the Commodore 64 was that everything, it was like this box that you could carry with you that other than the monitor, everything was built into it. You had to add a mouse and all that stuff, later, but mainly you only interacted with the Commodore 64 with the keyboard anyway. It was that time. We might talk about that a little later in the show, but yeah, I feel I don't like this. Now, apparently they claim that also in 2018, when the Mini's supposed to come out, that they're going to come out with a full-size C64. That's already been done. There was a company, like Commodore tried to come back like 2 years ago, or three or 4 years ago, actually, and they tried selling like remakes of the VIC-20, but with modern processors and modern hardware inside of them, but they looked exactly the same. That did not go over well. Like that business did not last long. They were even trying to create like their own little Commodore Linux and everything. And it didn't take off. I don't think there's really a market for this. And look, I have gone on record as saying that, the Commodore 64 is, kind of, is the phrase I cut my chops or something like that. Cut my teeth, maybe that's the better, or earn my chops, cut my teeth. I earned my chops on a Commodore 64. I just loved that computer. It's not my favorite computer of all time. That goes to the Mac G4 Mini of all things, Mini. But anyway, yeah, I don't think this is going to do anything if it even comes out. This shit is dime a dozen, and usually when it does come out, it's very lackluster. Nintendo's the only one that really seems to be taking these like mini consoles and retro gaming really seriously, outside of a couple boutique companies like Hyperkin or like Retro 8 or something. Other than that, that's it. Everybody else is just slapping the Sega name on something, and you're getting ridiculously piss poor hardware. So yeah, I'm not too excited about this. Somebody asked about it, and I was like, nah, this isn't doing anything, for me, not really. So anyway, let's talk about some other news, real quick. Battlefront 2, which is Star Wars Battlefront 2, the new one that came out in 2017, which we've been covering either on Sovereign Tech Prime or on Patreon episodes as well. They apparently are completely redoing their the progression system within Battlefront 2. They didn't say what exactly they're redoing, but apparently they're going to completely redo it. That game is notorious. That's going to go down in history and I still play it. I think it's great. Like, I actually really enjoy the game. Of course, the single player more than anything, but even in the multiplayer, I'll have some fun. But yeah, it needs a lot of fixing. They need to add a lot to it, and I don't know. I don't know how they're gonna get out of this. Because, this is the thing. Like, modern gaming, speaking of classic gaming, modern gaming, almost like the budgets that these games need or, have to get made, like, it practically requires them to do, like, all the microtransaction bullshit that Battlefront 2 went through initially and that EA eventually canceled. Like, modern gaming, its business model alone is flawed in what it takes to get a game out there. We're not in the days anymore where you paid $50 for a game and then you got the game and that was the game and there were no updates and you just move on. Like that time is really over. The only company that can really pull that off is probably Nintendo, again, because A, they're the greatest gaming company in the world, but B, is because they have that very tight-knit, especially with their third-party games where they can pull this off, or not their third-party, their first-party games, I'm sorry. They have just such a tight-knit connection between their hardware, like the Nintendo Switch, and their games, like, say, Super Mario Odyssey or something, where, the game, like, making money off the hardware and the game allows them to come out with, like, free updates and to constantly patch new game or something. But they have the incentive to do that because that game is selling their hardware, which is potentially where they make a lot of their money, or it's selling their games and vice versa. Like, it's this very interesting, not paradox, but it's this interesting amalgamation of how all that works. The synergy that they have. But they're unique in that. I think they're very unique in that, and their ability to do that. The bulk of the modern gaming industry, I think, is really in trouble, and it's going to have to go back to the way things were, where you were paying $50 for a game and that was the end of it. Because this all this stuff is, I mean, who can even afford a lot of that shit, you know? It's really bad. Or we're going to end up, I mean, we're already in a dystopia, or we're going to end up in a worse dystopia where kids just work their ass off, you know, and teenagers work their ass off, and maybe even adults work their ass off just so that they can keep buying microtransactions. But I hope that humanity says, fuck you to that, you know, and walks away from it. We'll see. And, you know, and this gets to our kind of the main subject for Game Talk this week, and this is one that sort of affects the show, and that I'm a little pissed off about, because I ended up like kind of buying into not microtransactions necessarily, but buying into what they were selling, like buying digital goods through this. Miitomo from Nintendo, which I just got done saying is the greatest company. I mean, look, overall they are. Okay. Miitomo, which came out 2 years ago, I want to say in April. Was it like April 2015, I think? So Miitomo was this, if you don't know about it, it tried to be like this hybrid of using the Nintendo Miis from the Miiverse, which is part of the original Nintendo Wii, which is arguably the greatest selling a video game console of all time. You know, like it was taking that and trying to create like a social media platform that was sort of like half Facebook, half Ask.fm. Okay. And because it would ask you questions and all this. Now, at first, like there were millions of downloads, and actually Nintendo's stock prices skyrocketed within like the first month of when Miitomo came out. And people thought, myself included, wow, this is going to be a big deal. This is going to be a thing, especially because they'll keep rolling out new features and all that. And for a little while they were rolling out new features, but then kind of the main feature that I think everybody knew, or at least I knew, that it really needed, they never did. And that was, you needed to be able to create custom questions. But instead, Nintendo just had to keep, or really is through a partnership with a company called DNA, D-E-N-A, that, you know, they kept coming up with the questions. And so you didn't really have a whole lot of control. I mean, you could give answers, but you didn't have a whole ton of control. So it never, you know, it took off for a while. And then because you didn't have enough custom abilities for customization within it, it's sort of, I think that's what caused it to fall by the wayside. For a while, it was popular because they would release content that had to do with like their major properties like Metroid or Zelda or Mario, but they went through Kirby, they went through those pretty quickly. And then they were kind of left with nothing. I used it. The reason that this affects the show, I didn't care about the social media aspects so much. I loved what you could do with the Mii. Like they had this Mii photo maker where you could take your little Mii character and you could customize the Miis to a fair degree. You know, I mean, they looked a little antiquated, but you could customize it enough. And I would make Miis of me and like Stephanie and, you know, of all like the different characters within the Sovryn universe and everything. And I would use that as cover art and say like, if like MK Lords is going to be on the show, I would, you know, I would have, or if like a story that she sent in as a producer, like that I would put her on the cover art or something, or whoever was going to be on, I'd put them on the cover art and I'd have them, and I'd use it for all kinds of things because it was easy to kind of animate these characters and all that. And so the cover art for 2 years anyway, on Sovryn Tech has come from, and on Sex and Science Hour as well, actually, has come largely from Miitomo. But they're shutting it down on May 9th. It's all over. It's done. And like, I don't know if they're walking completely away from the Miiverse. I mean, they already shut down a lot of the Miiverse that was part of Wii U. They shut that down earlier in 2017. We talked about that. And yeah, they're walking away from this. Now, I know a lot of people were probably hoping I would talk about Nintendo Labo. That'll have to be like next week or something. I'll talk about that at another point because that's very interesting. That's all the cardboard stuff that Nintendo's releasing to interact with the Switch. But yeah, Miitomo shutting down, this sucks. You know, but it doesn't suck in like, oh, wow, I feel like a part of my life is gone or something. But like to get like a lot of the outfits and all the other shit that was in it, I probably, I spent some money in this app, and it just goes to show, don't bother with this crap, and it speaks also to, what was happening with EA. It speaks to, how the modern gaming industry, sort of has to work. Again, this isn't it's a Nintendo property, but it's not exactly a Nintendo game, but like the incentives are so off, and look, if you loved this game, Well, when the server shut down, it's over. And that's another problem with modern gaming, is that so much of it requires you to connect to some server in West Bumfuck or wherever. And, if they shut down the server, well, it's over. And you can say, yeah, but it's a free game, so who cares? No, I spent at least $50. I mean, I'm sure it was more, but I spent at least $50 on this game, at least. I probably spent, more than that. But so, no, I paid for it. Shouldn't I be able to hold on to that content just like when I used to be able to buy, I don't know, when I would buy Soul Calibur 3 on PlayStation 2, I still have that. I still have the disc and I could still pop it into PlayStation 2 and it works. It doesn't have to connect to shit. This is a very real problem in gaming in general, okay? And it's something that I, as a game developer myself, stand starkly against, which is why my gaming company is called Zomia Offline Games, okay? Because you don't need to connect to anything online and you can play that game for whatever and whatever, even in emulators in the future, they should be easily playable. So yeah, we got to pay attention to this and keep an eye on this and maybe start sending the market signals that, no, we're not going to buy into your bullshit, because you're just going to shut it down in a year or two or even less. I think it's a real problem. And I mean, there's more to say about it too, because it's admittedly, it's kind of twisted, right? Like with these games that require so much server connection, like MMOs and all that, while I can get that they're fun, a lot of these things, I mean, this is stuff that people just used to do. They'd go outside and they'd LARP, right? Or they'd pretend that they were, a level 40 paladin or something. And hell, I did, and you'd go out there and you'd rock your shit and you'd have a good time with your friends and all this stuff. It's kind of weird because now we're almost charging young people and older people, because there's plenty of adults that, I mean, the bulk of gamers are older, okay? Like over the age of 35. And we're kind of charging them the ability to do what people did for free back in the day. Like we're selling back adventure to people that they used to just, have their own little adventures in their head outside. Something's very off about the gaming industry right now, and it's from the ground up. And I think there's going to be a shakeup here eventually. And I think that's why actually these mini retro consoles are so hot right now, because you buy it and it just works and it just does the business. And these games, you just play them and you don't have to invest any further. And you're just like, wow, I just play it and you beat it and you go. So maybe the market signals are already being sent. I don't know. And it doesn't hurt that, like, especially with the NES Classic and the SNES Classic, Linux is like is the best selling operating system in the world right now, because those are technically Linux boxes. But anyway, I'm disappointed that I won't be able, because I really enjoyed messing around with MePhoto. I'm going to find some kind of alternative to do that, and something that's a little more serious, I think. But it was fun while it lasted. But there it goes, and it all comes down to, why did that fail? It really failed because Nintendo would not. And I get it. There was problems with pedophilia, which is a very real problem within like the Miiverse on Wii U and all that. So maybe that's why they were being very restrictive in what content could be shared within Miitomo. But that was effectively its death knell, and that's the thing. You can't, if you want stuff to last, you can't control it. You got to like let it go into the wild and just accept the risks of, what people do with technology, right? So anyway, there it is. It's ending May 9th. I don't know if any of you signed up for it. There's not really anything you can do. You can't export any shit. I don't know what all this is going to look like. They just said, yeah, we're canceling it May 9th, and that's the end of it. So I don't know how that's, because like if you go to your My Nintendo site, right, like it shows you what your character looks like within Miitomo and only within Miitomo. Is that going to last that way forever? Like, I don't get how this is going to work. Well, we'll be keeping an eye on it. Anyway, we'll be right back with some more Sovereign Tech. Hey, got to tell you, you want to keep an eye on the cryptocurrency space. We were just talking about ZenCash earlier. You want to see how the price is doing? Let me tell you where you go to do that. You go to CryptoCompare.com. CryptoCompare.com, they keep an eye on all of the, not just the price, but also all the developments that's happening within a lot of these cryptocurrencies, the latest wallets and all some news stories, all this different stuff. But they keep track of so many of the cryptocurrencies out there, and it's such an exciting space. I don't want to talk about the ICOs. That's not exciting. But everything else is pretty exciting. The shit that's actually built is exciting. And if you want to keep an eye on that, like ZCash or, Bitcoin itself or whatever, Just go to cryptocompare.com, leave that tab open, keep an eye on things. That's what I do, and I thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Let's get back to the show.
Tool of the Week.
It is time for Tool of the Week, where I cover something that I find useful. Could be a service, could be software, hardware, whatever. And I recently tried something out that I was fairly pleased with, okay? And they are not a sponsor. This is a service that I wanted. So this could almost be a tech history segment too. We'll see if we get to that. But I collect rare books, okay? Like really rare out-of-print books. And maybe even not just the really rare, but like the ones that people don't think about. Okay. For example, like as far as rare books, like I have a copy of The Mana Machine. Okay. Which The Mana Machine was a book that came out in the 70s that makes the claim that when the Israelites were going through the desert, like in the book of Exodus and so on, that they, how they got their mana was actually from this entire was from this like device, this advanced device or something. It's an interesting book. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying it's a very interesting book. But it's a book that usually sells for like $300, today, because it's long been out of print. Okay, so you have books like that. But then at the same time, I have I have other books, like I'll have the sequel books for Invasion America, which was an American anime that came out in the 90s. I think it was on WB or something, that had Jonathan Frakes as a part of it and some other stuff, or maybe it was on UPN, whatever, regardless. But I have the sequel novels for that. Now, those obviously aren't expensive, but they're rare and they're never going to get an ebook release. And that's the thing for a lot of these books that I collect. I mean, there's other ones too. Like I collect all the Sequest novels. And I mean, I tons of them. Now, I never collect them with the idea, not that I'm like a minimalist or something, not exactly. But I don't. My shelves don't need to be cluttered with books, as beautiful a thing as that is, and it really is a beautiful thing. But I do want these books, and the fact, and I love my Kindle Oasis. I'm a big fan of my e-readers. I want to be able to read these books or reread these books. And look, they're never going to get released as an ebook. There's no point. There's no money in it. Usually the copyright's questionable in and of itself. I mean, fuck intellectual property, but whatever, the copyrights are there. Usually that's a problem. Or you run into the issue that like there's no money to be made. Like I have the sequel book to Primal Rage, the game Primal Rage, and that book is hot. I mean, like it's literally sexy. It's a great book, all off of that game, with giant ice apes and everything, right? But these things, again, they're never ever going to get released as an ebook, most likely. Or like Bruce Boxleitner's Frontier Earth books, like all this different stuff. So what's a guy to do, And I don't want to keep all of these books. I have limited shelf space in the BDSM studios, so I don't want to keep all of them. Some of them I keep, but so what I do is there are services out there. Particularly, there's one called $1scan.com. That's the website. One is in the number one, $1scan.com. So I use this website, and I was pleasantly surprised. This service, I should say. And there's a bunch of different ways you can go about using this service. But what they do is you send them the books, and then they will turn them into PDFs with varying, you have a lot of options of what you want the PDFs to end up being, looking like. Like, do they have, what is that, OCR or whatever, where they can be, like you can scan the text out of them and everything. And, you send it to them and they do it. And so I was like, okay, let's try this out. Now, the reason they call it $1 scan is because there's, it's $1 for every set. Now, a set is, I think, 100 pages. Like that's one set is 100 pages. And so it's like $1 per set. So if you have a book that has 300 pages, it would cost you $3 to get that book scanned. Okay. Now, they do offer... And they offer, again, there's a bunch of different, like there's so many features involved. Like you could do it, you could have it set up, you could have your account with $1 scan set up to where, and they're based out of the West Coast, where Amazon can ship a book directly to them and they'll just scan it and then they'll send, that way you never have to deal with shipping or anything. I mean, like there's a lot of options involved. There's where they can shrink the size of it, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But you can get like a lot of their extra features you can get for free if you get a subscription to them, which a subscription costs anywhere between like $15 a month to $100 a month, depending upon what you want it to do. Okay. And I have quite a few books that need to be scanned. I was going to do it with a private scanner. I'll still get one of those, but then I'm not having to deal with an entire library that I need to get scanned and effectively put into my Kindle Oasis or onto a hard drive. Because, I mean, that's me. Like, the storage of knowledge is so important. It is so fucking important to do that, in my opinion. And you know, when you look at the legal battle that Google Books is going through, you know, when that was supposed to have like every book ever, I mean, that's just not going to happen. So we, you know, the people that give a damn about books and about knowledge and about, you know, art, like novels, you know, maybe the works of Ursula K. Guin or something, we have to take matters into our own hands. Okay, and that's exactly what I did. So $1 scan, I sent them quite a few books, and I went with like their larger subscription model, which allowed me to send them, what was it? Was it like 100 sets, 10 sets, or 100? I forget exactly how many sets it was that I was able to send them. But I did that. I sent it to them, and there ended up, I think it was 100 sets because somehow, and I don't know exactly how they count this because I botched it up somehow because I ended up sending them 108 sets, I guess. And so they charged me a little extra, but you know, they have their own little messaging platform within $1 scan, and they messaged me and said, hey, you know, we want to scan your books, but we can't, you know, you need to pay us because you sent us more than what your subscription allows. And I was like, all right, fine, you know, just let me know what it costs and I'll take care of it. And so I paid it, and then they, like, within the next couple days, and it depends if you get this, when you get a subscription service, they kind of prioritize scanning your books. Within a couple days, they had them scanned. And you can download them right from their website, and you want to download them right away because they may not be up there forever, and I wouldn't trust their servers. You know, not that I don't trust $1 scan, but you know, it's the nature of the beast. You can do what's called a fine-tuning before you download it, where on each book that you get, and this is if you have the subscription service, not all of it allows for you to do this, but there's a fine-tuning where you can say what kind of device you're going to read this PDF, and they just send you PDFs. That's what you download. It's not EPUBs or MOBIs, okay? And, you know, you can fine-tune it to whatever device that you happen to use. Like, for me, it's a Kindle Oasis, and so they try to get rid of some of the extra bordering on the PDF itself. I downloaded it both ways. I don't see the biggest difference at all. They are color scans. They're not black and white. And when you get them, these, you know, like your average 300-page book is about 100 and 130 megabytes or so. Now, that's huge for a book, because most people are used to like EPUBs or MOBIs or even PDFs where it's like you're lucky if it's a megabyte, or maybe it's 3 or 4 or 5 megabytes or something like that. I mean, this is really massive. Part of that is due to the fact that they're color, okay? And other part is you know, maybe it has to do with OCR data and some other stuff, you know, that gives it that huge size. I mean, they're doing a perfect representation of it, you know, or a perfect scan of it. Now, they will charge you $2 per set. So, you know, again, a set is whatever, you know, 100 pages, okay? They'll charge you another $2 if you want them to shrink the size of the PDF for you, because here's the problem. So for me, with my Kindle Oasis, you can only store in the cloud and send over the cloud. Blah, I hate using the term cloud, but you get my point. Like 50 megs, like that's the book size limit, okay? So obviously them being 100 some odd megs is a bit of a problem. Now, it's not a problem for my Kindle Oasis because it has 32 gig of built-in, you know, storage on it. Okay, so that, you know, that's not really an issue there. And if you had a Kobo e-reader, it wouldn't be an issue because Kobo readers, you can get ones with SD cards in them, and then you could just, you know, copy it over to your SD card, no problem. But if I wanted to keep a backup stored, which Amazon offers for free, like up to like 10 gig or something like that. If you want a backup stored for your, you know, for your Kindle e-readers, then you've got to keep them under 50 meg. So now what I did was there's I could have paid them to do it, but it would have tripled the cost of what I was doing. And that's unacceptable, okay, because I don't have that kind of money. Not for this library. So, but what I found out that I can do, and you can do this too if you decide to use the service, is you can because the scans are beautiful. Like, I have no problem with the scans that they did. They're great. They give you the cover. They scan literally everything. Some of the books I have are older, and there's like kind of what you would call page burn, where you can sort of see through to what's on the other page because it's kind of been imprinted. The ink has sort of been imprinted into the page ahead of it. Okay. I mean, that's there. There's nothing you can do about that. Like that's just going to show up, but it doesn't affect its readability. And I've already been reading these books on my Kindle Oasis, and it's just a joyous experience to be able to read them. But anyway, so what I did is there's a service called Small PDF, which you can use online for free. They have an offline desktop version that you can use now, but you have to pay a subscription fee. If it was a one-time fee, I'd pay it, like if it was $20-$30, because obviously I'll be using it a lot. But instead, you could just use the free one, at the website smallpdf.com or whatever it is, and it will shrink down even the largest book that I had, which is probably like 180 meg. It will shrink that down to about 30 megs. That's doable for me, and the quality's fine. Like, the quality is totally fine. And I keep backups of the full-size versions too, of course. Okay, but that's what I ended up using. I thought it worked beautifully, very well. And then I could then I can just send them up to my my documents folder for my Kindle e-reader, and then it can download and sync and send it right to my Kindle Oasis, and everybody's happy. I was very pleased with this. I will be sending another round of books to them in February. I did not send like my most precious books because I never used them before, and I don't trust other people's opinions so much, especially when it comes to the things that matter to me. Like, my library means everything to me, music and books. And so actually Stephanie means everything to me, but you get my point. So, but now this time around, because I was so pleased with this, so I give it very great reviews. The customer service I actually thought was awesome. They were very responsive with everything I asked about. I will be sending my rare books to them next time around to get full scans, and you don't get the books back, by the way. Like, they recycle them and they get rid of them and everything, but this is a destructive process. I'm aware of that, but I think it's worth it because these books are already going through a destructive process just sitting on my shelf, quite frankly. They're not going to last forever, especially some of them are, very old. So I'm sending it off to them, and I'm going to get those scans done and everything. Here's who didn't give me great customer service. Here's who really flubbed this up, and I want you to be aware of this. Make sure that when you send these, that here's a couple tips. Okay, when you're going to send your books into them, if you decide to use $1 scan, write down the books that you're sending them. That way you got everything scanned. Okay, write them down. Then when you go to the post office, and that's how you send it, is through the post office, and you send it media mail, right? Because they're just books, and they'll get there in about a week, and that's fine. Because with the subscription, you can only get you only do the scans like once a month anyway. Get insurance on it, and make sure you box those books really fucking well. You put tons of tape on that thing, on that box. You put, if you have like little air pouches and everything to put in there, you put those in there. You make sure that shit's secure, and they told me $1 book scan, made me aware of it, that, there was damage to the box that was sent, and we may be missing some of your books. And guess what? 2 of my books were missing. But it was totally the postal service that fucked it up. Now, I know what you might be thinking. It's like, well, what if actually it was, what if it was $1 scan because it was a rare book and they wanted to keep a copy for themselves and they wouldn't tell you? No, because the 2 books, one of them was one of the original Bill McKay Stargate books. I think it was book number 4, which is Reconnaissance, which was pre-SG-1. Okay, it was a Stargate sequel series to the movie and the movie alone. One of them was that is not a rare book. I already bought another copy, to send to them. And then the other book wasn't anything like major either. These were both books that, I might have paid all of $1 to get another copy of, to have them scan. So no, they didn't steal my books. Okay. There's no point, cause you could get hundreds of copies of the books that I talked about. They're not rare. They're just books that are never going to be EPUB. You know what I mean? They're never going to be ebooks. That's the only reason I had them scanning them. So, so just make sure you really lock down that box and make sure it is secure, and maybe get insurance on it when you send it through the post office, because the post office will fuck things up. And I get it. It was a heavy box. I understand that, but still, that's such bullshit. that I even had to mess with that and had to do that. The other one was like a Babylon 5 book of it was like it was the volume 2 of the Unauthorized Guide to Babylon 5. That was the other book that was missing. So anyway, I'll be sending them new copies of that for February. But yeah, $1scan.com. I was very pleased. They didn't really do anything wrong, and they delivered on everything that they said they would. And the only thing is be careful what extra features you buy from them, because really you could probably do it with your own software, like small PDF or something, and you could do it for free instead of paying extra for it. So, but if you're like me and you like to have a beautiful digital collection, I mean, my Kindle Oasis is a Library of Alexandria in my pocket at all times, and I love it, and I bow to it, and I kiss it, and I really do kiss it. The aluminum, lips on aluminum. That is such a nice device, especially, I already did a full review of it, reading it in the shower and everything. Oh, it's so wonderful, taking it into the Japanese hot tub. Woo, that's how you do it, baby. Make it sexy, read some poetry right from it, right to the gal in front of you. Oh, while you're steaming away. Anyway, yeah, so $1scan.com. I totally recommend it. I thought, that's the tool of the week. I think that it worked very well. I will be using it until my library is at the stage that I want it. Not that I'm getting rid of all of my books. Some books I think are just far better in the paper format, that they would not work very well, on my Kindle Oasis, and those I will keep, like a lot of my Star Wars art books and other ones. I might, and this is going to be an expensive proposition, I might get my Star Trek Encyclopedia scan though. I might. The edition that came out like last year or a couple of years, in 2016, because it came out around the time Star Trek Beyond did. I might get that done, and then I know there's going to be people that are going to want access to these books, but that's another subject for another time. So anyway, we'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Woo, check it out, $1scan.com. I was very pleased. I'll be right back with more.
Babylon 5 ended a great war and united 100 alien races in peace. Danger didn't die. It just went underground, with new heroes and new evils to carry the torch.
We need to make sure they all understand we will not be intimidated.
What is wrong with you people?
We have to protect him against himself.
It's an entire new season of Babylon 5, with all new episodes.
Babylon 5 is available for download on your favorite torrent site. See it now to experience the greatest show in television history. Babylon 5.
The Climax.
It is time for the Climax, where I can talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about, and let me tell you what I want to talk about. I want to talk about a woman I always want to talk about women, but I want to talk about a woman who inspired me in ways that I'm sure are incalculable and still have ramifications to my life today. The first time I had ever even heard of like the actual concept, like the political philosophy, if you want to call it that, of anarchism, and that like it was something that didn't necessarily, mean Chumbawamba, or like really the band, remember, the band Chumbawamba, they're anarchists of a type, or that it didn't mean any kind of like, Molotov cocktail throwing things or something terrible. The first time I ever experienced that was when I want to say it was high school, maybe first year of high school, I had to read The Dispossessed by Ursula K. And this is it's one of the books that's part of her larger canon of books, that being the Hainish Cycle is what it's called, which includes The Left Hand of Darkness, another incredible book. And like I can really, just to hit the point home of how that affects me to this day. When I finally decided that I was an anarchist, of course, I think everybody's born an anarchist and atheist, but when I finally decided in my later years in life, which was a few years ago, to say, no, you know what, I'm an anarchist. Like this is what's ethical. This is what's right. I think that one of the things that allowed me to accept that was that I knew that there were models of anarchism that were peaceful, that that didn't have anything to do with what the average person thinks of when they hear the term anarchist, and that totally comes from the book The Dispossessed, which is considered, widely as one of the greatest books of all time. It might not be in a top 100 list, but it'd certainly be in a top 1,000, and that's, considering how many books are out there, that's equally impressive in my opinion. Her works are Ursula K. Le Guin, she best known as a science fiction author, certainly a fantasy author as well with Earthsea. Her books are, widely translated into other languages. They are some of the best-selling books of all time. They are some of the most critically acclaimed, widely regarded books of all time. She is the real deal. Now, you heard her at the beginning of this episode. I played a clip from her when she was getting, getting that award in 2014. And she was making the point that we need to have authors that remember what freedom is. She was an author that clearly had and asked the questions and made the points about freedom. Now, it might not be freedom the way, maybe a lot of libertarians or other people that want to, dalliance around the word liberty. It might not be necessarily the way that they think about it, but she was asking the big questions. The big questions like, is anarchy okay? What is gender? Can we live in a society that doesn't have gender, like in The Left Hand of Darkness? All of these different, the big stuff, like huge ramifications of what makes up the human condition, what's right and wrong, the theoreticals of what this would actually end up looking like. And look, this is where science fiction becomes so important, because science fiction allows our brains to contemplate the future of what we're doing right now, what it can become. Okay, it is absolutely it's almost people don't get this. People don't understand how important science fiction is. And not that this is anything new that I've said, but it's almost therapeutic. It's almost a necessity for us to survive, I think, today, to mentally grasp everything that's going on, because we are living in, I dare say, a science fiction dystopia right now. A surveillance society. Everything. There's again, like I said, life is fucking amazing, but certainly the broader strokes, it's a pretty ugly situation right now. It doesn't always have to be that way, but the only way that it's not always going to be this way is if you have authors with the guts, okay, dare I say, with the balls to write the kind of stuff that would piss off every conservative on planet Earth, like Ursula K. Le Guin would. Satan bless her for doing it. One of the best. She died at 88. She started writing. You know when she started writing? She got, I think, her first bit of poetry or whatever, and her poetry is phenomenal. Her first bit of poetry, I think, was published at 11, in a full publishing house. It was the real at 11 years old. That's remarkable. A remarkable woman. Oh, but she was a feminist. We don't like feminists. Okay, you don't. Again, are you happy that you're listening to the show? You wouldn't be listening to Sovereign Tech without Ursula K. Le Guin. I guarantee you that. I guarantee it. Because it was people like her that wrote about these far out ideas, which, understand, in the 70s, anarchism, not exactly the best, not exactly something that's ending up on the shelves at the local bookstore. Okay? Some of the cool bookstores maybe, but, not at your, I don't know, whatever the big box bookstores were at the time, if there even was one. The Dispossessed was a revolutionary book. It's still revolutionary. You might think it's tame now. I think a lot of people think it's very tame now. But at the time, it was a very sexy book. There was lots of sex in it. Even that was revolutionary in and of itself when that book came out. The idea that anarchism, and so what if it's quasi communistic or something, who gives a shit? Okay, the bottom line was that there's some of the best speeches on anarchism in that book, and it's talking about the absolute nature of authoritarianism and how it is bad. Isn't that enough? It should be for us. She hammered it, and in the words that she was saying earlier, how, questioning everything from the ground up, the larger part of reality, the larger aspects. Talking about, the real payoff is freedom. I think, look, let me tell you, I think art, poetry, things like this, I think they are the very basis of what makes up the human condition. It's what we express. It's what we're, it's the thing we've got over the animals, right? Imagination. It expresses itself beautifully through art, which then inspires things into reality. And I think she's right. And I'm a little concerned. I share her concern that a lot of books are written more about the bottom line. Not the bottom line of freedom, but the bottom line of, making some amount of money. And yeah, people write to make money. Great. I understand that. And even she understood that there is there's kind of a fine line that you walk within that. Sure. Okay. People got to get paid. I'm so on board with that, But the broader point of that, I don't know if revolutionary works like The Dispossessed or Left-Handed Darkness or some of those others, I don't know that they would sell. Those books should have been made into full-on movies and well-done movies at that a long time ago. Instead, we get Earthsea. I mean, yeah, Lathe of Heaven was great, no doubt about it. George Orwell, I mean, that was awesome. Okay, which is another classic by Ursula. But I don't think people want to write revolutionary books anymore. It seems like the things that sell in science fiction today, especially, which again is a very important genre, seem to be a lot of the comedic stuff in the sort of the outlandish stuff, or not. I mean, it's all outlandish. It's science fiction, but just the wacky. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that seems to be the thing that gets promoted and put out there, not the stuff that maybe questions the very foundations of humanity and of society and of what we're doing and all that. That seems to have gone. I'm not seeing, I'm sure there's independent writers out there that are doing it, that are putting out stuff like The Dispossessed or like Left-Handed Darkness or something like that, but they're going away, and the financial incentives, sadly, aren't there, when really the incentives within, especially within science fiction, really within any subculture, which science fiction is very much a subculture, a lot of the incentives really just come down to passion, and for wanting so much, the incentives are, I don't accept life the way that it is. That's the incentives. That's what they used to be. And I think that that's gone from a lot of science fiction. I think that's gone from a lot of, fantasy is a whole other ballgame. I'm not going to go into that. Now everybody just wants to fucking write the next Game of Thrones, and I think that that's annoying as goddamned hell. But yeah, I think we're losing touch with a lot of art. What art can do, what it can be, what science fiction can do, what it can be. I'm worried that we're never going to get another Stranger in a Strange Land. I'm worried that we're not, that a lot of these other works, we're never going to get these things. Even Asimov's works. Asimov asked the big questions, and where we could go, what all this could look like, what the technology means to us, how it could get implemented, things like this. I'm not seeing those books that really get into that. Instead, it's all about big hooks and surprise shifts and oh, I can't believe they did that and all this stuff. Even what's getting written about the incentives seem very skewed. Why do I do podcasting? Why do I why do I do Sovryn Tech? The primary reason? Yeah, it's nice to make money off of it. Sure. And I do. I have sponsors. I have the patrons who I love. The main reason I do it is because my opinions aren't represented out there. And if they're not represented, I'm worried that the world I want to live in will never exist. Even as small as that little world needs to be for me. I think a lot of writers, I think people like Ursula K. Guin, who obviously had to deal with very real abuses, had to deal with very real glass ceilings being held down, social mores that said, oh, you need to be a baby maker, social mores that would say this and that, had to deal with all of these different challenges in life just because X chromosomes. I can imagine that she wrote about worlds she wanted to see. She wrote about the questions that she wanted there. What inspires somebody to write just a groundbreaking book like Left-Handed Darkness where they get rid of genders? Really, what's the push there? Is that completely financial gain? Oh, no. I'm sure that's somebody who said, it'd be really great if I got treated like a human goddamn being by everybody else on this planet instead of something else, instead of some second-class citizen just because I have tits. I'm sure she'd approve of me saying that too. It's a pity. I get it. Like, yeah, look, there's nothing wrong with wanting to make a profit. Okay. That's fine. And art can exist for all kinds of reasons. It can exist for just the pure pleasure of experiencing it, of taking it in. Art can exist for all kinds of things. But one of the aspects of art is to help forward the human condition, because I think that in many ways it's almost the goal. I mean, even engineering can be its own art. So many of these things, and if everything just comes down to the profit margin, what the hell? I didn't start Sovryn Tech to make a profit. Initially, I wouldn't even take donations. I was just going to do it completely for free just because it was fun. It was something to do. And yeah, I think that we've got to start incentivizing that aspect of it more. And I mean, there's ways to do that. You hold contests that say, okay, the book needs to be about something. It needs to be about this social issue or this economic issue or, this, whatever the issue happens to be. And then, hopefully you get great things that kind of come out of that, because all the great books are not yet written. I think all the great movies have been made, but the great books, there's still plenty to be had out there. And they're waiting to be written, but it's got to come with passion. It can't come with this like, oh, I want to make, I want to make this amount of money off of it. It has to have something more. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's got to have more. Ursula K. Guin, the reason her books were so groundbreaking was because she wanted something more than that. Yes, she wanted to get paid for her craft. Great. Okay. But there was more. She had a drive. She needed this stuff to be out there. And man, did she deliver. And I only listed off a few of her books. And there's nothing wrong with it being a simple adventure either. I'm not saying that. But I think we are there's things that are missing. There are very skewed incentives, and we're not paying, people are not paying enough attention to, I mean, look how bad it is, right? Like, you have the books that are, and yes, like, let's admit it, folks, that this is bullshit. And this is a scam. Okay. With Kindle Unlimited, right? Okay. Where you can read all the Kindle books that you want. The way that they base the metric of how, so, you pay $10 a month, something like that, and then you get access to all these books that are on Kindle. Okay. Now, how do the authors get paid that write those books? Amazon bases it upon page count. How far in the book did they get? And then that's how much money you get. People started, and we've talked about this before, but people started making books that had links in them that would take you from, that would, instead of starting you like at page 3 or like when you'd get to page 4, it would take you to page 400. And these books would, have these crazy page counts, even if there was barely nothing in them. And then it would register at Amazon that, oh, this person, read 4,000 pages or something. And you'd have people making like $80,000 a month on that, not because they wrote great books, but because they gamed the whole fucking system. And you could say, well, fine, whatever, you're not really trying hard enough if you don't cheat. Okay. I get that idea. Go down fine. I get it. But that is such fucked up incentives. What happened to just wanting to write the great book for the art's sake? There's nothing wrong with that either. And I think that's going away. I think Ursula was right. And it's a shame that she's gone. Fortunately, we have her work to look back at and get inspired by. And I totally recommend reading her books. Some of them may seem tame now, but I think they still have a lot to say. I think there's still a lot to glean from it. I think anarchists in particular should be reading her books. Yeah, I use the word should. Deal with it. Because this is the exploration. We're not there yet. We're not at the points that she wrote about. So yes, there's still something to glean from them. But I am so glad that she graced this earth with her tremendous talent, with her commentary, with what she had to say, with the guts that she took life on with, the whole thing. I am glad Ursula K. was here. I am sad that she is gone. I have to watch so many of my science fiction author heroes go. The longer I live, the more I leave behind. I always know that. And it sucks. But fortunately with authors especially, and musicians, I guess to a degree too, we can continue to enjoy their work into the future by reading it, rereading it, introducing new people to it. If you have not read Ursula K., read it, understand it, know what's going down. This is the good stuff. Trust me. If you trust my taste, and a lot of people do, because you keep asking me what I think about things when it comes to, pop culture and books and movies and games and whatever else, then trust me, read Ursula K. Le Guin. She is as important now as she was decades ago. And she has a point in that we need more authors like her, and they are not out there right now. Maybe that could be you. Maybe it could be me. I love to do a bit of writing myself. Get it out there. Be passionate about it. Express your passion. Do whatever you have to do to get that message out there, to get your book out there. Maybe you've wanted to be a writer, do it. Don't worry about the money. That'll come after. Get the book done first. Anyway, so yeah, total credit. There would be no Sovryn Tech without Ursula K. Le Guin, and so obviously I will absolutely dedicate an entire episode to her. She was a force of nature on this earth. If you want to help keep this, what some people have called a force of nature, that being Sovryn Tech, going, of course, do become a patron. Just go to solutions.zog.ninja to do that. We actually talked about Ursula K. Le Guin a little bit more on a recent Q&A episode there. I am happy to talk about her anytime, and any of the other greats, and especially the ones that didn't get recognized, which she spent most of her life trying to get other authors recognized, and I thank her for that as well. So thanks to her for everything you just heard, and that's it for this week. Of course, next week, I'm not going to spoil the surprise, but I got some fun stuff coming up for next week, and then it's off to Liberty Forum, baby. Woo! I will see you on the other side. Woo!
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.